And in my organization, of course, we are engaged in the area of legal empowerment. It starts with looking at laws and ensuring that they have a adequate gender perspective in it. Legal identity is an issue that is in SDG 16, and it is incredibly important right throughout. If you want to participate, if you want to be part of society, you have to have legal identity. And many women do not have that. Women are not registered necessarily. They don't have identity papers, and in many countries, indigenous communities and others, entire communities are excluded, and within those communities, women are found to be even doubly discriminated. And we have, as IDLO, we have worked, for example, in Morocco, which is, in a traditional society, traditional Muslim society, what we were looking at were children who were born out of wedlock, where the mother could not get identity papers for the baby. And how do you empower the mother, who is under some social stigma for having given birth outside wedlock? How do you empower her, and how do you get the institutions, the local institutions, to respect her and deal with her with respect? And when I say deal with her with respect, I mean a simple issue of walking in and demanding a paper, and then getting the identity papers for the child so that the child can then have access to health, inoculations, schooling, and so many other things. So this whole issue of identity is, again, critical that comes up. Now, of course, laws do not implement themselves automatically, so there is a whole issue of regulation and policy that one has to look at. And in all these situations, the engagement of women, how do you get them engaged? Now, I mentioned laws. There is something that is somewhere kind of forgotten in the 2030 agenda, and that there is a whole legal system that doesn't exist in the formal ways through formal institutions. It is actually informal, and women are very often affected by those informal justice systems. Let me give you an example of a project that we have in Burundi, where we are looking at a massive program by the government to register land. And of course, in the context of registration of land, what has been forgotten is that women in Burundi very often have informal rights to land. They can access land, they can use it, they can farm it, but they do not own it. So when ownership is registered, their ability to use is being forgotten. So they are just losing it, and they themselves are not aware of their rights. And this brings me to the point that I was making about legal empowerment, making women and girls aware of their rights so that they can claim it, they can engage in the process. And in the context of Burundi, we are working at the level of communities, bringing community leaders, women's groups together to discuss this issue and to see how they can resolve and ensure women's access to land is still preserved. In Uganda and in Tanzania, we have just launched a project that is empowering young women and adolescent girls to hold health organizations legally, through legal empowerment and social accountability methods, to hold the service providers in health responsible. Basically, these women, young women, are being made aware of their rights to claim it, to protect themselves, because they're at a high risk of HIV infection. So it's basically teaching young women and girls that they have a right to say no to unprotected sex. So as simple as that, making them confident enough to be able to seek that assistance they need and to be able to deal with those issues. So when we talk about SDG 16 and SDG 5 and SDG 1, we're talking about basic stuff about how do you empower women to participate and claim their rights as citizens. That, to me, is a much more powerful form of democracy. Far removed, perhaps, from parliaments and parliamentarians and elections, but democracy happening on the ground.